to the Belonging Project, Today Global Conversation. The Belonging Project has the purpose to share real life and powerful global conversation that offer inspiration and practical strategies to anyone who is on the path to find their true voice in society and as a leader, the journey toward belonging. This conversation is exactly what is needed to be at this moment in time. We've asked our guests to join us via video to allow us to create an authentic connection. Our rules. Number 1, nobody gets to be wrong or right. Number 2, everything is welcome. Third, come as you are. Everything is included. And lastly, everybody gets to be vulnerable. We love talking about wins and success, but we love talking about challenging and failures even more.
And our guest today is Helene Bejjani. Helene is global learning and development leader with over 15 years of experience in people development in the corporate environment. She has worked with people from around the world in different industries and sectors. She's on a mission to build better workplaces where people feel empowered to learn and grow. She focuses her work on 3 key areas: the corporate culture and work environment, leadership development, and employee development. Helene holds an MBA and a master's degree in HR. She is Lebanese with some Armenian roots, and she has been living in Paris in France for the last 13 years. Dear Helene, thank you very much for being our guest today. We are thrilled to have you here sharing your story with us and your experience toward belonging with us.
Thank you so much, Firenze. It's an honor to be with you here today.
Thank you, Helene. And we'd like to start by asking you to share more about your story in your own words.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Belonging. Well, like you mentioned at the end of my introduction, I'm originally Lebanese. I have Armenian roots from my mother's side. So my mother's family have traveled a lot and they got to Lebanon. And I myself traveled and came to France, been living here for 13 years now. Never imagined that. And those who have been on similar journeys, living in different countries, and I know both of you can relate to that, you feel like you don't truly belong to the place you are, and you don't belong to the place you came from anymore either, because societies evolve, cultures evolve. So it's like you don't belong anywhere, but at the same time you belong everywhere because you're highly adaptable. You can adapt to any environment. You kind of develop certain skills, I feel, in detecting things in your environment and adapting. But for me, my belonging is really about making a place for yourself in a group without losing yourself. Because sometimes people, in an effort to adapt and blend in, could lose themselves in the process because they try so hard to be someone else. So they are accepted in a group that they lose themselves. In my personal story and connected to the work that I do, like you mentioned, Firenze, it's I remember my first experience in the workplace. I was on a part-time job and I was still studying, doing my HR studies. And I had a terrible manager, really bad manager. She used to, it was a woman, and she used to humiliate me in front of my colleagues whenever I would do something that wasn't up to her expectations. And it was all new to me. I didn't know if workplaces were supposed to be like that. So it was a bit disappointing. And it made me question I didn't feel clearly that I belonged there. And I kept questioning, is this normal? What should workplaces look like? And it got me honestly into studying this further and looking at, okay, how can I influence this? Because this cannot be right. Workplaces shouldn't feel like that. So this is why I got also into learning and development, because I felt like this is the place where I could make an impact. Of course, there are many areas in the human development field where we can make an impact. For me, that was through learning, through helping people, helping leaders like my ex-boss be better leaders, and also help people be more self-aware and be able to learn which environments are wrong for them, which ones are good, and how to adapt. And having lived and worked with different cultures throughout the world, it's just things explode. You learn so much about yourself and about others.
That's such a great mission, no? That you felt this purpose, this mission, and if you would say in this way, to bring this, not to be the voice, to create better workplace. So I'm curious, Elena, what do you see nowadays if your work or in your organization, but even in your network, what is changing? Because we are hearing a lot of in our field, in coaches, in leadership outdoors, this awareness of such a sensitive topics like recognize emotions, humanizing the workplace. So because you were there as an internal, me and Furiosa, we have more the external view. What is changing for you nowadays?
Yeah, I think the pandemic was a big, it was a big thing. It influenced the workplaces so much, and there's always a talk about the new normal and the new way of doing things, because it's a disruptive era. Mm-hmm. And what mostly changed in this era is that you cannot pretend anymore. Mm-hmm. And human connection became a priority. It was kind of taken for granted when we used to see each other. Although there was a lot of work on leadership development, and it continues, but we were hit in the basic needs, our health, our own health, the health of the people around us, people we care about. It was very personal. It became personal, and it impacted the way we showed up at work. So what really changed is becoming like skills like empathy. I think this is one of the things you were mentioning about, listening to people, helping people feel heard and understood. When you are dealing with employees who are struggling because they have family members who are sick, or people who passed away in their close circle, or if you have kids at home. So this was a big thing, kids being at home, doing homeschooling and also working. So it builds the stress a lot. So stress levels are high, well-being is impacted. I'm happy that now we're talking about mental health as something like it's on the table, it's serious. People, companies are trying to do something about it. The leadership behavior changed. People started connecting with others virtually. Some people had never done it before. So it was hard for them. I mean, you can easily forget about someone virtually. You have to be intentional. You don't, there's this expression about meeting at the water coolers. No one meets at water coolers anymore. Yeah. You have to be intentional about talking to people. So it doesn't, it's not just happening because you just come across someone in the hallway and talk to them and see how they are doing. Those natural conversations that used to take place in the physical environment were to be recreated in a virtual environment, but we had to be more intentional about it.
Yeah.
The sense of belonging, right? Even if the workplace is now more virtual than it ever been, belonging and having that sense of belonging to the workplace, that's still present. And I'm sensing that maybe, people that feel that they don't belong to the workplace, it may feel even more, like that outcast feeling, because there's this virtual environment. There isn't maybe anyone that you can meet and maybe talk about football or movies at the water cooler. The intentionality may have brought some more formality and distance in some other cases.
Yeah, Absolutely. I think because of the virtual world, like I said, things had to be intentional, but we could have, I mean, lots of people started doing that, like having informal get-togethers, virtual, like coffee time, or having games, having fun, just to connect virtually. Um, for me, it was about, mostly being intentional about how we treat employees and the employee experience itself, which changed a lot. Um, when you are virtual, yes, belonging is no longer the same. I was having a discussion with a colleague earlier. What makes you feel that you belong to a workplace? And for me, a few things stood out. One of them is the company's vision. If the company is clear on where you're heading, it can, whether you're going to an office or you're working from home, you're gonna get into the energy, this collective energy that is driven by working together towards a common purpose. And I think companies who articulate that really clearly and help people see how they contribute to the bigger vision, they impact their belonging a lot. For me, this is a huge part in driving belonging. For me, belonging is partially being part of something bigger than ourselves, feeling that we are part of something that's bigger than ourselves. And vision provides that. Knowing as a company, where are we going? And how are we going to get there? And cascading that to every single person. How are they contributing to this bigger picture? This is one part. So, I mean, this is for me like the foundation, the sum of it all. Then you have to have the regular communications happening so that people know where we are with this vision. How are we going? How are we heading? And this is where you can lose some of it. And you can think that I sent an email, so that's fine, people know about it. But no, we know that people don't read, and you need to over communicate. So ongoing communication, whether it's not done formally through a get together that's more fun, but you can also share regular updates through different mediums. So now people started using not just Zoom, but also offline collaborative communities like Teams or Slack. And this became more popular for a reason, because people can chat through them. They can learn a lot about each other, about what's going on in a very easy way. So communication started expanding, the communication channels started expanding, and you need to communicate a lot so that people feel that they belong to something. So they feel included as well. Okay. And there's also the inclusion at a smaller level if you go to the team. And this is where we talked about leadership impact as well. And people, what effort are they making also? So for me, it's a shared responsibility as an organization, building the vision and the purpose and helping people understand it, articulate it well, creating the system that will allow it to happen, the communication channels in place to allow this ongoing communication to happen, and also at the leadership level, how leaders behave, how they make others feel that they belong. And at the individual level, we also have a responsibility to understand the system and to see how we can fit in.
I love what you said about this responsibility as a leader, like being actually this role model. I hear other day a client saying, and not just this one, or many others saying, oh, my company is talking a lot this year or nowadays about well-being, mental health. They send a lot of emails. They have offering trainings, but at the end, we are still working, I don't know, many hours a day, a week. So it's not about promoting, like sending the newsletter or something, but what you were saying, Helene, that I love is really the action of this responsibility to take, to be responsible as a leader for our actions in this.
It's how we behave. It's not what we say. People will forget what you say, but they never forget how you made them feel, and they never forget what they see you do. This is what people, I mean, it's like when you think about children, for example, they don't listen to what you say. They listen to the way you act.
Totally.
You can tell them, don't yell, but if you're yelling, they're going to yell. So as simple as that.
Yes, totally agree. Yes.
And I also resonate with what you mentioned as well, Ellen, about how it's also to the individual. There's also the individual responsibility to make an effort somehow. The newsletter communication is certainly not enough anymore, and having the modeling from the leaders in the same way as parents could, model behaviors is crucial. And then also, I mean, once all this is set up and there's a structure, it boils down to the individual. Are they ready to, or are they willing to actually even to make an effort and connect with intentionality? And or maybe there's already a decision, there's already a feeling that there can't be belonging. Sometimes it's a hard and uncomfortable decision. I believe that sometimes some workplaces aren't meant to be for individuals, and maybe vice versa, which takes courage to get there. But yeah, is there a willingness to do something about it?
Absolutely, Fiorenza, and I'm glad you mentioned this. I was thinking about it as well. It's the cultural piece, the corporate culture piece. Companies have certain ways of doing things, and like you said, it's the behavior that leaders model. For example, it's the way people act every day, how they make decisions. This is the culture, how things get done around the place, and it also shows the real values. I'm not talking about things that are displayed on websites and whatever. I'm talking about what's really important in this company. And I mean, to your point, Andrea, for example, when we don't give people time, but then we tell them we care about your well-being, the value is performance first. It's not well-being first. So values are values and beliefs are what drive companies, and sometimes there is a mismatch between individual values and corporate values, and this really is something that needs to be detected even in the hiring process, or even before the hiring process, when you are promoting your employer brand on a website or through your interactions, to attract the right people who share the same values as the company. And we often see lots of companies doing things that look nice because it's good for their image, but it doesn't necessarily reflect who they really are. It's different. So they attract some people, and then they get they are surprised when people don't feel that they fit. They don't feel that they belong to a place. Or there is, at some point they are disengaged and not doing their best at work. So this cultural fit is so important, and it impacts belonging as well. I personally worked in companies where I felt like, with one company, I was really sad to leave. I felt like I'm loyal to the company and the brand. And with other companies, I'm like, yeah, I remember my experience. It was nice. and that was it. Because of this values alignment or misalignment. And it's not just, it's the corporate culture, and it's also the leaders that we work with. This expression, people don't leave companies, they leave managers. It kind of is true to a certain extent as well. It's a relationship that you could have with your manager that influences a lot your sense of belonging to a company.
Yes, and I totally agree with you. Even with my clients, with that, it's about the self-awareness work. When they want to understand, oh, this is the right company, this right job, or whatever, the self-reflection is start to the self-awareness, the individual self-awareness in what is my values that make the right fit in the corporate values that that create this. So I will shift a little bit here, and I'm curious to, even based in your experience now with an Armenian family background, as a Lebanese and now in Paris for so many years, how this multicultural experience impact their land today, and this mission to create a healthier workplace impact you, this relation of your multicultural experience with the work that you are doing now?
Yeah, it does impact it a lot in the sense that I've always seen myself like drawn to work with people from different cultures. I've been working for the last, I mean, ever since I was in Paris, I came to Paris, I've been working in multinational companies who have presence in many places. So in my current company, we're present in about 40 countries. In my previous company, I worked in EMEA, but I had also worked with the US and with Asia Pacific. So I've always worked with people from all over the world. And the fact that I have a multicultural background, like I said at the beginning, it helps you develop certain skills. You become more open to differences. You shift your perspective and you learn because of your experience. Like me coming to France at the beginning, I mean, I think you can relate. Sometimes there are some codes that you wouldn't understand and you can be judged, and people could be harsh because you're different. So you learn from these uncomfortable moments to decode the culture. You learn that. And you learn it from experience, and you learn it from, you know, educating yourself on different cultures before, I mean, and traveling. I mean, people have been, of course, before the pandemic, traveling a lot. It became so common. I like to travel whenever I have the opportunity, and I love just, you know, getting to know different cultures, not just through the historic sites, but just talking to people and, you know, enjoying the food, because it tells you a lot about the culture. So with the work environment, this helps because you see people differently. You don't judge. You try to understand. You try to understand the difference. And the part about self-awareness that you mentioned, Andrea, is so important. I've been working, I mean, for the last decade or more on psychometric tools. They help you a lot understand yourself, your personality, but we are much more than just a personality. We are like a cultural background, how we were raised, and the mix with, you know, the background of our mom, our dad, the school we went to, the people that we that our friends when we grow up, the background, the people that we worked with, the environments we work with, they shape who we become and who we are. And the more you are open and you are exposed to different backgrounds and cultures and personalities and thoughts, the more you become, you know, self-aware, and the more you, the quicker you decode certain things, and you try and yeah, the quicker you understand different cultures and you adapt your style accordingly, I would say. So this adaptability and the resilience that you build with it, because you don't take things personal anymore. After, I mean, when you work with people from different cultures, you learn to understand that it's not about you. And you try to, you know, where to dig deeper to better understand what people are really saying and why and how.
Yeah, so true.
There are a lot of strengths that and skills that come up from having a multicultural background or even experience. And I'm thinking back of that quote that we were talking about before, you know, from Maya Angelou, you belong nowhere and you belong anywhere. It feels that there's a turning point on each multicultural person life journey, right? Where maybe we think that we actually belong nowhere, right? Especially, you know, for us that have been raised in multicultural families, having that sense that I don't belong anywhere. You know, I mean, I certainly had that sense growing up in Paris, and you know, I haven't attended international schools, right? So I just went to a normal school in my neighborhood, and there weren't necessarily a lot of multicultural families, so there wasn't someone easy to relate to, or to identify with, and having those shared experience. And I think I felt that I belonged nowhere for a while before realizing that actually there is something real about it, and there's strengths and competence that can be built. So I don't know if that resonates with you, but I wanted to ask you, what is if you remember the first experience, the first time that you felt that you belong?
First time I felt that I belong, not the first time I felt that I don't belong.
The first
it's much easier to remember so many times that I felt that I don't belong than the other way around.
I guess what's the first time that
mark on you?
What's the first time that you felt you belonged?
Yeah. I mean, if I think about it from a, as an adult, because when you are young, you don't think about this too much. You just belong. You're just in your natural environment. Like when I was at school, I was in a place that was safe, that was, with people with similar culture, background. I did feel that I belong. But when I think about it as an adult, I think when I felt that I belonged is with my previous company. I was part of a global team, but and I go back to what I was saying about the culture and how leaders behave, etc. It's I had the manager who was very inclusive of the team at some point, and we were like 25 people with really different backgrounds. But I really did enjoy this, the way she tried to build the team. Her leadership was so inspiring. And she did build a team where we felt like we each bring something to the team. We're all working in learning, or talent development in general, but we had different responsibilities, different hats. Some people were more specialists in certain fields. Some had like more journalists, but more in serving certain functions or geographical areas. So we each brought something to the table, but we managed to work together as a team to serve our internal clients. And we did have a lot of like team buildings and events. We used to meet like once or ideally twice a year as a team. Because we were all over the place. So it was very costly to get us all together, but it was worth it because it did make us feel that we belong to something. And like I said, going back to the vision, we knew where we were heading as a group, and it was much easier to articulate for a smaller group. And we knew how our vision as a group contributed to the vision of the organization as a whole. What are we trying to achieve? How are we moving the needle within our organization? And it was so powerful. For me, it was like an amazing experience having to, working with these people, because we each brought something to the table. We worked together, and we used to have like regular calls, and it was all virtual. And I'm talking about something more than 5-6 years ago. It was virtual because, we were scattered all over the world, but we did manage to create this. And this is, I remember really feeling that I belonged. And it's funny because sometimes I used to chat with some colleagues of mine in different departments, and they would be like, did we work for the same company? I'm like, yeah. I mean, my perspective, my experience was different than other people.
That's, I hear you when you feel heard, you feel seen. This, and create this inclusive. So what do you think are the factors to create this belonging culture?
It's a mix of practices and things that we need to happen collectively and things that need to happen individually. So if we go back to talking about organizations like the corporate environment, it's having the vision. It's a mix of having a clear vision of where we're heading as a group, so that everyone feels like they belong to something. They are contributing to a common effort. And also the culture, building the culture that supports it. And when I say building the culture, it's not about sending newsletters and stuff. These things like drive me crazy in learning. It's not about sending people to a training. It's the behaviors and I heard I read something recently about culture being not what is punished, but what are the negative behaviors that are accepted in a company. So what is tolerated? What are the behaviors that are not so great that are tolerated? This reflects the culture as well. So what are the common values that people share, and how do you want them to behave? And this drives belonging. So when companies put in place initiatives like diversity and inclusion and equity, for me, belonging goes even beyond inclusion. It's about helping people, like you said, feeling heard and seen. So this is what companies can do, educating leaders on, and it starts before the hiring process, in the recruitment process. Even when you have discussions, you can sense the culture. You can sense if you are being judged, or you are just you're having a discussion to figure out if you're a good fit for the culture and for the job itself. And this is why I mentioned also the employee experience, because it spans throughout the experience. How you're onboarded in the company, how do you feel like belong, all the practices that go into making someone feel that they belong in a company. And from the individual perspective, it's a shared responsibility. So people need to understand, first be clear about whether it's a culture fit or not. Going back to what you said, Fiorenza, about sometimes we don't belong in a place, but we just insist on going there because the pay is good, because it's close to home, because, we always have a reason to accept something. But just knowing whether there's a culture fit or not, because it impacts belonging. And from an individual perspective, what effort are you making as well to belong to a place, to understand how things work, and to adapt without losing yourself? This is important.
So rich, so good. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So it's time for our final quick questions, and it's really about answering with the first thing that come to mind. In a few words, belonging for me is
making a place for myself in a group without losing myself in the process.
Beautiful.
Beautiful, yeah. The best advice that I've received and that I would like to share with others is
stop and listen before you react. When you're facing someone who's different, we are all unique. So just take a step back, reflect before you react, and be open. And value difference. Sorry, too many advice. Valuing differences for me is critical.
So it's so important to have that little moment, little second of pause, right? Sometimes we have that impulse to just respond to something in the heat of the moment. And when we allow ourselves to just breathe for 2 seconds, we may have a totally response that we wanna provide.
Sleep on it. I like to say sleep on it. Sometimes I just don't react until the next day if I need to. I mean, know yourself enough to know how you react naturally and how to pause whenever you need to.
And finally, the world will be a better place
if we are more open and more open to differences, and we see the strength and values that they bring to each one of us.
Beautiful. Wow. Thank you so much, Helene. That was so rich, so powerful.
Thank you, Andrea.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here with us on this project, believing in our project. It means a lot.
It's an incredible project. I really, salute the effort. And like we said earlier, belonging is much more than just feeling included or valuing diversity, which is good, but it's not enough. Belonging is much more. It's having a place for yourself as a human being, and we need that more than ever. Yes. So thank you for this amazing project.
Thank you.
Thank you, Helene.